My name is Raphael Gaultier, and I'm a co-founder and kind of just help run the ship a little bit.
I'm Pari. I guess I was like early on in the team. I was the designer. Still, I'm the designer. I do the web stuff. Any of like the visual design stuff you see online or in print. I also did all that stuff. I help run the ship now too, doing all the events and whatnot. And trying to transition to more online content now that we're in COVID times. Lots of fun. And I also was director of A&E last year. So I worked with everyone there, and yeah, good to be back in the old stomping grounds.
Okay, I'll go next. I'm Grace. I am I guess, editor for Human Condition, and then just help with everything else as needed. I joined later than the founders and stuff. I joined for issue 2, just because I was friends with Wale, if any of you know Wale. So yeah, it's been really fun. I actually have issue 2 next to me, which is like a fun little party favor. I think this is issue 2. No, this is 3, right? Yeah, 3. Okay, cool. But anyway, I was just reminiscing on that the other day too. So yeah, it's been a fun journey.
Cool. I'll go next. Oh, Aidan.
What? Sorry.
Sound.
Oh, hello? No. Hello? Aidan.
I think if you talk off of the Higgins, it should work. I think if Aidan turns on his audio and you like pop over, Jen, I think it should work.
This is what is known as a pro gamer move.
Okay. Hello? Is this working? Wait.
Yeah, that's cool. That's working.
Okay. Hi, I'm Jen. I co-founded Human Condition with Raphael many years ago, which doesn't feel like that long ago. And I lead up the editorial stuff with Grace and obviously the rest of our team that helps out on the edits. So most of my focus was on the writing portion of the print magazine, and because we're such a small team, obviously helping out in events and coming up with how to engage the community. And that's what I did. Yep. Ta-da!
Pro gamer move. Okay, hi. I'm Aidan, and I probably the most recent addition. I started working with the team on issue 3 at the tail end of issue 3. And I do mainly like photo video stuff, but for the most recent issue, I helped out with illustrations. There's a handful of illustrations throughout the magazine. And I also did edits with Grace and Jen. Yeah, I also was on A&E last year. I was the program coordinator with Pari and Sabrina and the rest of you lovely volunteers. And it was yeah, it's as Pari said, it's good to be back in like the clutches of familiar faces and familiar arts entertainment energy, you know? Yeah. Mute. All right, here we go.
All right, thanks for sharing. One of the most interesting things I feel like about the Human Condition team is that you all come from disciplines that aren't necessarily like deemed quote unquote creative, and yet you managed to come and like create this platform for Seattle artists like all across the place. So I guess my question is, or maybe like something that might help prep by like giving a preface of is like, what are your backgrounds a little bit? So maybe like what you studied and kind of like what you were into before you came into Human Condition, just because I think that's so interesting. We could go in the same order that we started off in. So like Raph, Pari, Grace, and then Aidan and Jen.
Yeah, for sure. So I did business, and there wasn't really like an intention to do business hardcore. It was more like I had a chat with my dad when I left high school, and he was like, you should probably do business. And I was like, all right. It wasn't like I was passionate about finance or anything. I mean, there's nothing wrong to be passionate about finance. I think it's a great thing to go into, but it was halfway through school. And I met Jen, I think sophomore year, maybe tail end of freshman year. It's foggy, but we became super tight. And I remember vividly Management 200. I don't know if there's any business people in here, but Management 200, it was just like the bane of our existence. And we would always talk about how like business was just not for us at all. And it was kind of like well, like, what are we going to do about it sort of thing. And then each of us went on study abroad trips through our program. I went to France and she went to Thailand. And then when we came back in January of 2017, I don't know how really it started, but it was kind of like, hey, we should start a magazine. Like we should do an arts magazine. And that was kind of born out of just similar interests and wanting to share some of the faces and voices of the people that we were surrounded by. There's a lot of really cool people doing stuff that wasn't being talked about at all. And so we wanted to create a platform that elevated those voices, and down the road that kind of turned into actually like bringing people together and finding tangible ways in which we can empower one another. So that's a long-winded answer, but I didn't really know I was into art until like halfway through college. I never thought of myself as a creative person. I played soccer like all the time growing up, and then I tore my ACL freshman year of college. And that was like when I started shooting photos kind of randomly. But from there, it kind of just, life did its thing, I guess.
So I guess the best way to frame like my involvement with human condition is through talking about like my path in design. So I started doing design maybe like junior year of high school. I took a class where they like taught us Illustrator and Photoshop, just the basics. And then from there, I started freelancing like pretty early. I just like did random paid projects. Like I did my sister's like wedding invites. I did t-shirts for like the track team. And then moving into college, I was like, I have like no idea what I want to study. I had no idea design was even like a thing you could study. But I was like looking through the list of majors going into UW, and I was like, oh, like human-centered design and engineering, like that sounds interesting. And I had no idea what it was. And like, I'm pretty sure I still had like barely any idea when I applied. But I ended up getting in my end of my sophomore year. And at the same time, I was also the visual designer at OCOM, along with another friend of mine. OCOM is in ASUW. And so I had that job for 2 years while I was freelancing. I had that job until I was a junior in college. And that's when I met Raph, actually. He like walked into our office to use our photo studio for something. He's like shooting portraits of a friend, and then like he was like, oh, you do design, like we should talk sometime. So we ended up grabbing a coffee, and he was like, I'm like starting this magazine, we're throwing an event, would love for you to design like a flyer or like a poster for this event. And then we were like talking about it, we like went through a bunch of iterations, and then he was like, well, could you like design like the magazine too? Because at the time there was like an initial designer that came on, and he was like doing all the branding initially, and like did kind of like first run through of the magazine design wise. And then he left the team, and that's when I came in and started designing the first issue. And then from there, we've done 4 issues. We have our website, social platforms, 20 plus events that we've had like in-person experiences at, all the flyers, everything. It's been like in terms of like a portfolio project, it was like so ideal for being like a sophomore, junior, senior in college, like trying to get more clients outside of this work and just like enjoying the work that you're doing. It was huge to have like such a awesome group of people to work with around my own age doing something creative that we had full control over. And that's how I was involved in human condition.
I have kind of like I've always been really into doing like being all across the board, disciplinary wise. So in college, I majored in biology and I minored in LSJ, and most of my work experience, or Law Society's Justice, you probably all know what that is. But yeah, my work experience, I was like doing nonprofit work for like all of college, doing like working in prisons and education and I feel like the through line for all of that is like that much of social justice in Seattle is creative, and that's something I've always been really passionate about. So that kind of like naturally dovetailed with Human Condition. I think Human Condition, content-wise, has always been also about social justice and creativity, because those are intertwined. So it was kind of like a natural lead in to each other. And yeah, I guess more specifically writing. I didn't really get into writing until college. I mean, I liked it in high school and stuff, and I wrote poetry and things like that, but I think I just kind of like naturally fell into place, and I ended up liking it. And I didn't realize that it was really something that I could take seriously or do for work. A lot of the things that I've done creatively in my life, I always was like, these are just things that you do for free on the side. So yeah, I feel like Human Condition for me, having not majored in any artistic discipline, was like a really good experience to realize that many people do that for their jobs and make money off of it, and are fulfilled that way. So yeah, that's my little story.
Ta-da! Hello. Is this? It's working. Okay, cool. My background, as Raph kind of mentioned, I studied business at UW. Also, very unintentionally found myself in there. I was freshman direct into Foster, and I went to orientation. I had no idea what that meant, and I went to the wrong orientation because I had no idea what Foster was, and I had no clue I got into the business school, and that I signed myself up for that. So very unintentional, but stuck through it. I was really contemplating transferring out of UW for the first 2 years. I'm from New York, and just everything wasn't sticking, and I didn't know anybody. I didn't really feel like I had a place to ground myself, because it wasn't in school and the classrooms, and it wasn't really, I couldn't really find that friend group. So Human Condition, when it came about, gave me not only the friends that grounded me in Seattle and like the love for that city, but it allowed me to learn about and engage in the city in a way that I think I was really craving, which was this very grassroots, like isn't the word, but like community level engagement that I was craving and didn't have. And as someone that was out of state, didn't really have a lot of close friends, and hated her major, was huge for me to kind of fall into that. And so I poured a lot of energy into it because it just gave me a lot of energy back. And I stuck through, ended up graduating with a business degree, which like marketing and IS, I have no idea what IS is anymore, but that's on my diploma apparently. And then marketing I've actually used, and that's my day job now. But being able to do Human Condition, I think like it put in perspective what business school lacked for me, which was how creativity plays a role in every discipline and every realm of your life. And it's often discredited or looked at in a very narrow perspective. And to be with people that had no bounds to what that really looked and felt like was really powerful, and allowed me to feel really good about the fact that I, like Grace, and I think everyone on our team, is really interested in a pretty broad spectrum of shit, because we see how they're all interrelated and how they all connect. And likewise, being super passionate about like social justice, that was like, I don't know, like being able to see everything kind of just come together and the through lines into which they interrelated, and not having to explain that to anybody when we were doing our work. So all of those things are what I think it pulled from my background and propelled me moving forward into doing the work that I do now. So yeah. Da, 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 da.
Excellent. Sensational. Okay. Oh, so I guess, are we describing background? Okay, so let's see. So I did pre-med at UW. I was a biophysio major, and I did like all the pre-med shit. I did the whole like calc, biochem, chem, ochem, whatever. And I guess I was always like a little bit shaky about my major. Like I was always like the passion was always in like the other realms, I suppose. Like I was been always doing creative stuff since the get-go. But I feel like I got involved in the creative community in Seattle pretty late. But I'm really glad that that I got pushed towards A&E, that I got pushed towards human condition, towards like the latter half of my time in Seattle, because it was undoubtedly the place where I found the most like meaningful meaningful connections and like most passionate people and people who have like changed me personally the most. But up until then, I don't know, like so I'm from California. I'm from Irvine, which is in Southern California. And I came up to Seattle with two of my close friends from high school. We all like moved together, like we dormed, we came together in the dorms. And when we came together in the dorms for the first 2 years of school, we were under the impression that you needed to like seclude yourself and like rise and grind. Like you just like stay in your dorm and like work with each other on shit and like not go outside. And it was really like detrimental at the end of the day, because I don't know why, like we were under the impression that we didn't need to like stretch out and like find new people and community, and like we just wanted to like edit videos and shit in our dorm. And it was, I mean, it had some like good effects, of course, like I don't know, like it just showed us that the passion was there. But when we decided 2 years later to kind of step out and meet people, these beautiful things blossom, and I met all these wonderful people. I think I met Pari the first out of the crew, because that's him. I think I met Pari first because we were, so back like a few years before, when A&E was a little bit less cohesive as it is right now, obviously, looking at the amount of people in this chat. But before, I think it was like Pari and I were like the only volunteers, and we showed up to like a spring show meeting in like 2017, I want to say. And fortunately, Anya, who is the soon-to-be director at the time, was like very, she's incredible at bringing people together and like finding people who can support other people. And so she like, you know, did her little thing, and she basically facilitated me and Pari hanging out. And when Pari and I started hanging out, we started getting close. We started like thinking about A&E for the future years, because we both wanted to be a part of it. We started hanging out, and through Pari, I was able to meet Raph. I met Raph at I think I met Raph at the Pit at a fall show one year. Just taking pictures of I think No Name. I think it was that year. No Name and Marky Basie. Yo, amazing. And then yeah, from there, through Pari and through Raph, I met Jen, and then I met Grace through Jen as well. And yeah, just kind of blossomed from like deciding to get out of your dorm room. It's kind of like opening yourself up to meeting new people and working with new people. But yeah, that's pretty much, yeah, that's my framing for HC.
Sweet. Well, we want to keep this event like open to whatever questions anyone in the crowd has or anyone attending. So just like raise your hand via Zoom or throw them in the chat if you're curious about something. But for now, so how did you guys decide like which stories you wanted to tell, and like did your approach to that change over the years, or like what have you learned with the storytelling portion of it?
I can take this one, and then if you guys want to add on.
Sure.
Cool. Well, I was mainly excited to talk about how in the very beginning, and Raph would build on this, it was really just like us sitting down thinking about who do we know that kind of does creative cool shit that like on the side that might be interesting to other people because it's interesting to us. And so if you look at issue 1, it's like almost 100% people we were friends with that had things going on, either like mainly out of school, that were in the creative realm that we found interesting. And then with every issue past that, it progressed to 1, be focused around a particular theme, which helped narrow down the type of content we got. And 2, the creative scene in Seattle is very communal based. And so we were very fortunate that pretty early or quickly, I would say, we got introduced to a really wide net of people, or everyone kind of just knew someone, and it was very much like one removed connection to finding people. So if we sort of knew someone out there, then we could probably find our way to get their contact and ask them if they wanted to be interviewed or a part of it. But yeah, please add on, friends.
Yeah, building off that, I think Jen summed it up really well, just in terms of like how we got people to be a part of this. Because it was weird, because we thought like no one would want to be a part of something that, you know, didn't really exist yet. And we were really surprised at how grateful people were just to like have their voice heard. And especially that first issue, it was mainly friends, like people that we like either kind of knew or we were just really close with. And it felt like a very like community driven collaborative effort. And then putting that issue out into the world, that first event, we had like probably like 100 or 200 people that we just didn't even know at all showed up to it. And so from there, we just organically grew our community in for us, it was huge ways. Looking back, as you know, it was like small incremental growth, but really important in our genesis, just in terms of, you know, finding people who wanted to be a part of the same stuff, you know, like-minded individuals. I mean, this chat has like 34 people who are all relatively interested in the same thing, which I think is really cool that we're able to form community in that way, especially virtually. I mean, that's something that we don't even really know how to do. So yeah, just in terms of storytelling, one thing I wanted to add was, don't ever be afraid to reach out to somebody that you admire just to pick their brain, especially if it's coming from a place of authenticity. Because at first, I mean, we were so nervous reaching out to people that we looked up to. I was always just like out of my mind, freaked out to like, you know, touch base with Jordan Nicholson, this guy whose photography I've known for fucking like 5 years or something. And he was just, I revered people like that. And there was tons of people like that in the Seattle community in an artistic sense. But reaching out to them and like grabbing coffee or just hanging out with them in a way that wasn't like a, hey, we want something from you, but a genuine, hey, I want to like, not like a romantic relationship, but like build a relationship with you. You know, like I want to be your friend. That's how everything started. We wanted to make friends in the art space.
All right, solid. That was great. I guess kind of a tangent of that is something I've been curious about, but I'm sure kind of like something all platforms kind of field is like, how do you, like, not necessarily, we talked about how you chose stories that you're telling, but now in a world that's kind of consistently changing, how do you tell stories that I guess reflect not only the values of human condition, but the values of like the individual members? And at the same time, I guess, what have the values of human condition kind of looked like, and how have they been shaped over time? Like, that's kind of a mouthful, but I guess whatever you piece from that.
Yeah, I can talk about this a little bit, and then everyone else can join in. I think something that's always been really good about Human Condition, the team, is that we started as people who just like liked each other as friends. So in that sense, we've always been really able to have conversations about like what our values are, and if pieces reflect that, or if they don't, or how much that matters. Like if someone, like, not to say that throw values out the window, but how much of our like I guess forcing everything through a filter of our perspective is like our job as a platform and as a publication. So that's something that like I don't think we have an answer to, but I think we've always like discussed at length and have been very open to talking about with each other, which I think is really cool. And I hope that we also are open. We try our very best to be super open to any critique and any input and any feedback that anyone has. Like, you know, all of our events, we're just trying to talk to the people there and just get the vibe on what people think of what's happening and what they want to change, or what they don't see, or what they do see and what they like. So I think that's like a really important through point. Another thing, kind of tying back to the last question, is that like for our one of our issues, we were like, oh, our theme is like the fallacy of the American dream, right? And like that was a very succinct theme that we tried to like make sure all of our pieces and all of the work in it reflected to some extent. And then the more recent issue, while we do have like themes and through lines, doesn't have quite as much of a rigid like thesis statement, I guess. And I think the interesting thing is just that like both work and both do different things, and it's hard to like choose something like a theme and stick to it when this publication is going to come out 6 months or a year later. Like that's just something like ideating and storytelling for the in that kind of way is really difficult to do because you just don't know how relevant your themes and ideas are going to be a year from now or whatever. So I think in that sense, it's really important for the team to be able to be open and have those talks about value systems and how that changes throughout the course. And I feel like our friendship is really at the foundation of why that works for us. So.
Yeah, Grace said it really well. And I totally agree. I think our relationship as a group of friends is what allows us to do the work that we do in the way that we do it, because we're able to have these types of conversations that sometimes are really tough to have. And I think being an independent magazine or anything that is independent, the best or one of the best things about it is that you have control on whether you have full control on in terms of dictating, you know, is this a piece of writing or a piece of content that we want to stand behind, include in our magazine, put on our socials, like whatever it might be. And knowing that, you know, our values center around what we've talked about, like community and accessibility and inclusivity, and asking ourselves really honest questions, like making sure that the writers in the magazine and the people that we're featuring are of different backgrounds, and we're not just like shouting into an echo chamber or re-emphasizing a perspective that already has a platform to speak, but instead providing that platform to perhaps people that we don't see speak very often or have their stories told super often. And so those are always questions that we ask ourselves. And then speaking from like a editorial perspective, like everyone on our team can attest to this, but just like this vivid memories of like being on the phone with Grace for this last issue, let's say, and like really hacking our brains in like a deeper like values perspective, like is creating this one edit on this one line for this person's story, like making sure that like doing that is not in service of ourselves or our personal perspective, but something that is maintaining the voice of the writer and their perspective, which we may not 100% be behind, but we think is important, you know? So those types of discussions and having that honest check-in with ourselves and each other, like it's something I really value. And even though it's hard, like it's definitely made me like a better writer, a better person in general. And so I really value that aspect of our work.
Cool. Okay, we will want to leave some time for if anyone else has any questions. It can be for the entire crew or just one of them. We can just sit in silence for a little bit to make some room. If not, we can ask some more questions.
Can I ask you, like, kind of, anybody can take this, but like, how did you guys decide how much time you were going to allocate to this? Like when you were in school versus like now that most of you are graduated, and like, did you like set specific expectations that you wanted it to grow into like a magazine that was like, I don't know, double the size that it is now, or like, what was the timeline for what you wanted?
I can take this, and anybody else can hop in, but yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. How do you allocate time, especially in school, and if you have like jobs outside of it? That was something that we were constantly asking ourselves. I mean, this is going to sound really bad from like a school perspective, but we allocated way more human condition time than school time. It was just kind of like the reality of the situation. We were like, okay, at the beginning, we're going to like split it half and half. We're going to work really hard at school, and then, you know, our nights will just be like human condition ideation sessions or whatever. But it's the reality is it's going to be different for everybody. It's all about like what you prioritize and what you find most important. And really at the end of the day, we valued sharing these stories and creating this platform just because we saw the impact that it was creating. Seeing people that we didn't know coming to our events, meeting someone else that we didn't know, and then going off and creating their own thing. That is exactly why we do our work. So stuff like that really validated what we were doing. And down the line, that kind of just, it made us want to create more and build it to something bigger. And it was never like a, hey, we want to be complex, or we want to be hypebeast, or whatever it was at the time. It was kind of just like we want to do this for Seattle because this is really important. And then when we graduated, it was like, we're not really done with this. Like, there's still so much that needs to be done. There's so many people that could still benefit from this, that we kind of saw a reason to keep going.
I take this real quick again. Sorry.
Oh no, hop in, sir.
I think in the beginning too, I don't know if I ever made a like conscious decision to be like, I'm gonna spend like this percentage of my time doing this magazine because it's gonna have like this impact. Like, I think when the work really kicked off for me was the summer of, I think it was 2017. And I was like, I had like a full-time job in the summer, and I would just like do this in the evenings and in my work breaks just because it was fun. And I think I didn't have to start making choices about time management until like a year into the magazine, when I was like in school and I had a job and I was doing the magazine and I wanted like a social life to like not go insane. So I think especially in the beginning of projects, it's tough to like give it a certain amount of time because you don't know what the impact is or what it actually requires. So if you're starting anything out, I'd say just like go for it, like spend as much time on it as you want to spend on it. And honestly, like the stuff that I spent time on that wasn't class in college got me way further in life into the things I wanted to do than spending time on class projects. So my two.
Yeah, to second that, I completely agree. Like, I don't do anything like science related right now. Like, all of my livelihood is based around the type of creative projects I did with these guys and other people in school, between classes, you know, between making time for things. And I think like when you get to a stage, like you definitely want to convince yourself that you have the passion for something. And when you get to a stage where you're time managing, even if it's really frustrating, it feels really difficult to squeeze all these things into one day. If it's something that you really care about, you're going to feel like a lot of gratitude towards the fact that you have to like parse something out and make difficult choices on how to prioritize your energy. Because Jen and I both work like relatively corporate jobs, and I know like Raph and Pari are working, like they're working creative gigs that are outside of like magazine, that are outside of personal projects. And I think like speaking for myself, whenever I'm doing like my quote unquote job, I'm always thinking of ways to apply it to like personal projects, like magazine or like things that I'm doing on the side. And I don't know, like I never like really go to work and I'm like, oh my God, like I'm here today, I'm going to think about how I can make this company, like, you know, I'm going to give everything into this company and excel this company for, like, it's mainly like I take what, like I take things from that and I just want to, from like my work, and I apply it to my own stuff. And when you have something that you can like kind of like dedicate and like take energy from other areas and pour into something, you become like very grateful that you have that thing that you need to time manage. And yeah, I would say in terms of advice, like if you feel like you're passionate about something, like you'll figure out a way to time manage it, just as long as you make sure that you're healthy and happy, like, you know, squeeze in those hours, like it'll be worth it.
Awesome. Well, I think Nate/Sam had a question.
I'm unmuting myself. Oh, it worked. Cool. Yes, I had a question. So let's say hypothetically that like some of us were thinking of doing something similar or whatever, like, and then some of us, the people who are thinking of doing it, also happen to all be juniors and only have 1 year left. How did you deal with that transition from undergrad to postgrad? Like, do you have any advice for that? What was the hardest thing? What was the best thing? Like, that's my question. I'm mute.
Raph?
I can make mine really quick. I'd say communication is the biggest thing. Just being clear with one another about like what the expectation is with this. It might seem like 1 year is not that much time, but it's so much if you break it down into individual days. I mean, spending time with a project, you oftentimes get lost in the beginning stages. Like it's so exciting when you get to kind of like build something off the ground. You're doing it with friends. you get to kind of like build this new world that people haven't seen yet. And first of all, I think it's really important that you do it. People deserve to hear what you have to say. And you're bringing something new to the table. So that's really exciting. But secondly, yeah, just be able to talk about it, especially with the team. I don't know how big the team is or if it's just you guys, but just being able to like make those expectations as clear as possible.
Yeah, and on top of like kind of in those expectations, you should not feel bad about like needing to take time off. Because I know after we all, well, I'm the youngest of the, or Aidan and I are the youngest of the group. We graduated 2019, everyone else graduated 2018. And we were like, full transparency, we were trying to release this last issue. I think it was either June or July of 2019, and we ended up releasing it late February 2020. So like we like had all these plans. We were like, yes, like we're gonna make this work. Like this is our like last huzzah before we graduate. And then we were like, we need a lot more time. Like we need to like figure out our lives and like how this transition is happening. Because like as Aidan and I were graduating, Aidan and Jen were moving to New York. Grace was moving back to Chicago. And there's a ton of just like outside factors that you have to deal with that you probably won't, like you can't be able to, or you can't expect them and you can't plan for them. So just give yourself some grace in dealing with the life transitions before like going all in on whatever like that you want to do. Like make sure to like give yourself some time to like think about it, make sure you're good in the transition before like pouring your everything into what you're doing.
Okay, really quick. I just want to say if theoretically these people are thinking about doing this theoretical similar idea, you have one, like you can just set a reasonable expectation, right? Like you can just do one, and that's like a time capsule. You know, it doesn't, I feel like for me personally, I always get bogged down with like, how can I create longevity in this creative project, right? Like, how can I make this into something bigger than what I have in my mind? And like one theoretical issue or whatever it is like more than nothing, right? And like that's also kind of like a time capsule of your creative experience of your senior year or whatever. Like that sounds so sick. I'd buy it, so do it.
Also, would like to add one quick note on top of that. I think like starting is also probably the most difficult part of any creative project, and so I would I'd really urge you to just begin, and you'll take it somewhere. Like if you start it, you're going to be twice as motivated to bring it to. You're going to set yourself a checkpoint, whether it be one issue, like Grace said, or you know you can build it to as big as you want. But just beginning is going to be enough motivation. It's going to be enough to get you going to something. Something is, yeah.
Great, thank you so much. I think our next question is from Charlie.
Hi guys, my question is kind of about what Human Condition is kind of aiming towards for the future. Be super curious to hear how, since you guys are, you know, like all changing locations and expanding your personal horizons, whether you guys intend to change, I guess, the format of Human Condition, or do you still want to keep it like uniquely a Seattle type thing, and just hearing about what you guys have for the future, if you can tell me, that is.
I can hop in if need be. Yeah, I mean, that's something that we talk about. I think innately it's going to change to a certain extent. We're not the same people that we were in 2017, and Seattle's not the same city it was either. I think there's different needs. There's different things that we want to do. And I think that's going to just show up in the project in one way or another. One thing that I'm really excited about is now that we all do live in different cities, I think it could be really cool to elevate Seattle's creative scene by putting the artists here in conversation with people outside of the city. I think everyone's always talking about like, how do you put on for your city? How do you like blow it up? And I don't think that's like really, that's not really like what we're trying to get at. It's more like, how can we empower these people here as much as possible? How can we make the biggest impact? And I think especially now in the time that we're in, I mean, there's such a cool opportunity to start doing this kind of stuff virtually. I mean, anybody could have joined the Zoom call from all around the world. And that's that's really exciting that you don't have to do events locally and only have people who are all in the same community there, because then it brings all sorts of different perspectives to the table, which we're always trying to do. I think it's really important. So that's just one little tidbit at least.
Cool. If none of the other human condition people have stuff to add, Alyssa has a question.
Yeah, I was gonna ask. I also come from. I'm also in business right now, and I don't know if I'm projecting by saying this, but I was wondering if you guys ever had like difficulty kind of feeling like maybe you weren't committed to like your creative passions because you weren't pursuing it within like your higher education, or like feeling like maybe like there are people who are like doing more creative things than you or something. I don't know if anyone's ever felt like that, but like if you have, like what have you done to like kind of reconcile that? Because that's something I struggle with, like doing finance. I'm like, and liking like stuff that's creative. I just feel like there's like kind of a clash between like wanting to label myself as like a creative and like be confident in that.
Great question. I'm gonna tap Jen for this one.
No,
later.
No, it's not. Okay. Anyways, I think that is a really good question, and I think a lot of a lot of people on our team. I'll speak for myself. Like for myself, it was definitely really easy to compare myself to other people. And in the very beginning, when Raph, like we were talking about this idea about doing a magazine, I was like, dude, I have no fucking clue how to make a magazine. Like, I don't have a degree in that. Like, I've never had any experience doing that. So I should, so I shouldn't be the one doing it. Like, it doesn't feel like I deserve to take that space and start it. But I think very simply, Raph asked me just like, okay, but no one knows how to do it when they first do it. So why don't we just do it? Like no one has a degree in this. No one really knows what they're doing, and we'll just do it. We'll make it up, and it'll be fun. So I think the best thing for me to get out of those ruts, like where I'm feeling really insecure or have like imposter syndrome for creative spaces, is I write a lot, like journal. So I like journal out all my feelings, and then I'll probably like call up a friend, or I'll go talk to Aidan and be like, wine, whatever. And I think Aidan and like a lot of people on our team have a really great perspective on defining creativity in a way that is so genuinely like interdisciplinary and widespread and like has no bounds, that to be able to be exposed by that every day nearly is, I'm very fortunate for that, because it's broadened my perspective and understanding of the arts and of creativity. And it's allowed me to take ownership of how creativity shows up in my job. Like I work at a marketing agency right now doing account management, which has like a lot of budgets and a lot of timelines. And I'm like, I don't feel nearly as bad about how creativity doesn't show up, because I'm recognizing creativity in different ways and allowing that to come through and work in different ways. But that's very, very new for me. And even this past week, like I still get down on my job and how it lacks that creativity. But to take a step back, have a conversation with a friend, or, you know, like just be reflective to yourself, to remind yourself of how it is a much broader perspective in terms of like how creativity can show up. And just because you're in a field that is not known for it in a particular way, it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist or you can't bring it to the table. And that's always a really interesting and fun idea. Like if you can be the finance person that comes up with cool new ideas of how to do something, like that is a way that you're exercising creativity, and allowing that other people to see things in a new perspective and give it new meaning. And that's kind of what it comes down to for me, at least. So it's my 2 cents. Do you want to add? No? Yeah? Okay.
Hello. I think Jen said it really well. Creativity is like asking yourself, am I being creative enough? Are these like, why are these people more creative? Like, I think creativity, it's like, obviously it's like a very apt term. It like makes a lot of sense, but the reason why human condition is, I think, very successful and very impactful is because I don't think anybody in here will label themselves as a creative, because when you look below the surface, like, what is a creative person? A creative person is a problem solver. They're a listener. They're somebody who tries to speak to people and put a platform for people. They let conversations grow. Like, I couldn't give you the formula. Nobody could give you the formula for being creative. You just tell somebody how to, or you want to instruct people on how to basically elevate others. And so if you're in business, I mean, I can't really speak to business school, I didn't go to business school, but I mean, you have to problem solve. You have to critically think. You have to do all these things that are incredibly important if you want to apply that to a magazine or to any creative project. You know what I mean? Like, being creative is so, like, it is like a boundless, it's like this amorphous term, because anything you do as a human being will contribute to your creativity if you want to look at it with the correct perspective or in a given light. So, you know, you can pull anything from anything, honestly. Like, it's look at all of our backgrounds. We all do different things, and we pull those things to make a magazine. And so, you know, it's you make it what you want. Yeah, that's what yeah.
I guess I have an answer for almost like the opposite scenario, where it's like, so I studied human-centered design engineering, so like mostly everyone that I graduated with is working in tech right now. So whether it's like people working at like Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft, City of Seattle, like doing their website stuff, it feels like everyone sort of like used their creativity to like go to the tech world. And sometimes I feel like I'm doing a disservice to like my education to do like visual design, because like I took like one visual design class in college. I think like the most important thing to remember when you're going into any type of career is that like self-satisfaction needs to come first. Because like I find myself comparing myself to all of my peers who I graduated with, and they're all making like crazy like 6-figure plus salaries every year at like 22 years old, and I'm like, shit, like maybe I should go do that. But like I'm only thinking that because I see these people and like that's like something that I want, and like I want them to see me as such. But it's like everyone has to go on this journey of like finding your own way to be content in what you're doing. And like being content doesn't mean that like you have to be comfortable. I think being content just means you have to be in a place where you're going somewhere that you think you should be going.
I'm gonna add one last little thing, just because I don't want to bog down all the amazing answers that the team just said. I want to echo all that. Just coming from like a business background specifically, I totally know what you're talking about. You're totally valid in those feelings. Foster tends to just create these like very specific pathways for what success looks like. And just know that that's not real. There's so many other ways that you can use not only your degree, but the things that you learn while you're in that environment, while you're in this environment, when you're going to do your own thing. It's like, there's so many different ways that you can use what you learn in very tangible ways. So don't feel like you're a failure, which isn't a bad thing in its own right, but not following what they're telling you to do, that's not exactly like, I don't know, I can't wrap it up very succinctly, but just know that you're totally valid in that, and you have every right to go and do your own thing.
I had a question. You guys all have like really diverse creative skill sets, and I think a lot of people in this call like do a lot of different like artistic or creative things. How do you go about finding people with like complementary skill sets, or I guess working in a team where people do such different things, and kind of combining those things towards like one product?
I think so I learned this through being in human condition and doing arts entertainment, is that you have to be honest about what you want, and you have to communicate that to other people. Especially like with something that like Raph and I have found out more recently, like how complementary our skill sets are. And it's because we said like, oh, like I don't really like to like I personally like don't love like going to coffee chats. Like I'm like so awkward when it comes to like sitting down across from another person and like just like sipping coffee and talking for like 2 hours. But like Raph is like amazing at them. He loves them. But then like Raph might not like want to like learn the design side or like technical side of the website, but like that's what I love to do. So I think the key to any of the fruitful, complementary, creative relationship is making sure that you communicate what you want out of it, and you have to expect the other person to communicate what they want. And if they don't, then you have to be willing to ask them about it.
Just gonna jump in. Definitely agree with Pear Bear. Couldn't agree more. Also, I think something that I learned on the editorial side, like even if you're all kind of in the same lane, you can like flex your little creative muscles in different ways. And I think even if something that we've all been really good about is that like even if you don't have that byline on your resume or something, you can still have an input and opinion, and like you can help and be a part of it. So like everybody should be on editorial and like looking at stuff and having input, and like everybody should be like, oh, looking at the designs, right, and like giving Pari and Raph or whoever's doing it feedback. Like that's something I think in creative spaces, especially ones that we create for ourselves, it's really important to validate everyone's opinions and inputs regardless of like their express background, because we're all like work in progress in that way, right? Like we all want to try new things and like get our feet wet, and this is the space where we get to do that. We get to be like, oh, these are people that we want to work with and we're doing creative work that we want to do. So now I can like get my first experience with, like, I text Pari all the time. I'm like learning InDesign and Illustrator right now. So I'm like, hey, Pari, please help me. You know, and it's like, it's important to be able to ask each other questions and also to respect each other's opinions, even if you don't have this exact same qualifications or background. So.
Perfect. Thank you guys. Very insightful answers. Just wanted to do another call for questions. If y'all have anything you want to say, you don't have to say it out loud. If you're scared, put it in the chat. And at the same time, don't feel obligated to stay on. If you have to go somewhere, feel free to hop off. But thanks everyone again for coming out. Anyone have any questions? Anything at all? You don't have to answer right now. We have a couple prepared. One question we have is, what was, being that Human Condition is now in its, I think, what, third year, maybe fourth year of existence, what are individually some of the most valuable experiences that it's been able to bring you, whether they were things you were able to actually bring to life, things you were able to participate in, or even like conversations you may have had with someone you didn't expect to?
I can hop in. So I think like selfishly, the best thing that Human Condition, I guess there's two things. The first thing is that like for my like professional side, like relationships are the single most important thing that matter, especially like, at least from my own perspective in doing like design work. People hire you because they know you. And when you have a team like Human Condition, who is like so diverse, everyone's in different backgrounds, everyone has different friend circles. Our events pull together a lot of people from different sides of the Seattle scene. You just end up meeting and knowing a lot of people. And like, that's how I've been able to survive as a freelance designer for like the past years, just like knowing the people that we know from Human Condition. The other like best thing that I've learned from Human Condition is that like working with your friends is the best idea possible. Because like, I think a lot of people tell you not to work with your friends because it can become complicated really fast. But we've all learned to like set boundaries and communicate and be honest about Human Condition stuff and just like our life stuff, and like being able to know each other and be empathetic about our personal lives has really helped us to like push Human Condition forward as a platform and push each other forward in our personal lives and professional lives.
Want to completely echo what Pari said. I am so lucky that the most like important people I met in Seattle and some of the most important people in my life are through like A&E and human condition, kind of like intertwined, because I feel like I met people in both realms simultaneously, kind of like because like, you know, and that community that came from those groups has like basically like made my experience in Seattle like worthwhile. That is by far the best thing that's come from human condition for me, simply put.
Quick add, agree, echo everything. Also, I think that the value of working with friends and with people who have different skills and backgrounds as you is like that you are pushed to do things that maybe you wouldn't have been comfortable with doing yourself or have thought of. Like I'm definitely more of like kind of on the introvert side. Like I wouldn't have thought of to put our huge like parties that we've done for every issue. That definitely wouldn't have been like my strong suit. So like I think it was for issue, I always confuse the issue. I think it was issue 3 that we had the like, oh wait, no, it was issue 2. I always confuse that. Issue 2 when we had the like huge house party with each different house had like a house show. It was like a really crazy fun thing. And yeah, like for me personally, I think it's the experience of being around other people who have different ideas has pushed me like on a personal level to like try more things or like go to coffee chats that I have always felt super awful about, which like there's boundaries and modulations for that. But yeah, I think that's a huge benefit.
Yeah, all these guys said it best. I pretty much owe everything that I am interested in and excited about to everybody on the team and just like the community that we've met through Human Condition. I'm super grateful for all of it. One, my college experience wouldn't have been anywhere near what it was if it wasn't for this organization. What am I saying? This sounds so corporate. For this group, and especially these people. I mean, it was really cool because for the 4th issue, right at the end of February, we were able to have everyone back in town to do it, and that was like one of the most special things that has happened in my life, I think. So it was really great.
We have a question from the chat from Emily. She says, I'm wondering how you guys were able to overcome talking to people you admire. I find myself having some built anxiety talking to other creatives I'm not close with.
Yeah, I totally feel that, Emily. I think the main thing was, I mean, this is going to sound kind of cliche, but just go for it. Anybody who you talk to is going to be so excited to talk to you. For one, everyone loves talking about themselves. So like you just asking them questions is going to get them really excited. But 2, they also want to know what you're up to, and you have so much to offer as well. I mean, I think it's cool when you're able to build community in ways that are like kind of off cold calls. But I would say come at it from a perspective of wanting to be their friend and like build a relationship before like asking to get something from them. It always feels a lot more authentic that way. But just know that like we all have a lot of anxiety about that kind of stuff, and it can be very nerve-wracking, but all of the best things come from meeting new people.
Okay. I think like in retrospect, if I think about moments when I didn't ask somebody who I admired for advice or to chat, I really regret those times. And it's almost like crystal clear now. It's like, why would I not just send a message? Like a message is so harmless, and especially if you're thoughtful and gracious, as Raph mentioned, when you reach out to them. I mean, if they're judging you for coming at them honestly and curiously, like maybe that's not a person you want to deal with. I think like we're all just people at the end of the day. And I think if anybody's trying to big man you over like something in the creative realm, like they can fuck off. I don't know. Like it's like, I know it's like a lot more like mental, like there's a bigger like mental barrier. It's not like, it's much easier to say that than to do it. But yeah, I don't know. Like personally, in retrospect, it's always like, should have done it. And I try to think about that when I reach out to people today, pretty much.
I just want to add, like, me personally, my like method of, I would say, I get really nervous really easily in person, like at big events, like if there are a lot of people and like I really want to talk to somebody, like I am most likely not going to talk to that person at that time. And that's just like what I found, it's not good for me. Like it's not good for anybody in that situation. And so for me, having more of like a personal, either like one-on-one time with that person or finding a moment to like grab them and talk to them outside of like a big social gathering. Like, so I think finding what works for you, and that could be like an email or like a DM. Like I personally probably rather write like a 2-paragraph email than send like a quick DM because I'm not witty and I don't know how to do that. But like finding what works for you, and hopefully, you know, that reaches that person and engages them in a way that connects with them. And I've been really lucky in that sense, where the moments that I've sought out that more individual time just because it make me more comfortable, I find relationships that, you know, they either appreciate that a little bit more or it works for them too. So I would say do what is within your comfort or ability, especially at the onset, because then the more comfortable you get in that safer space, like safer medium or whatever way you're doing it, the more encouragement and motivation you'll have to exist in maybe like the bigger spaces.
Good.
I would add also that, I mean, maybe this is a cliche answer, but like realizing that everybody is also just like absolutely winging it, like on every single level of like what, like in the music industry, like nobody knows what the fuck is going on. Like everybody's just like, oh, like I'm like, who cares? Like I'm just doing it my way. So like nobody like actually knows more than you in like any field. Like anything that they know, like they had to learn just by like talking to people too. So I would say like everybody, like nobody is above each other, even if they act like it. And if they act like it, maybe you shouldn't talk to them. Or Aidan's answer.
Real quick, sorry, on this chat commentary, I just want to say I feel it too. Like we are the group that's like behind these parties and these things that are happening. And even like the last one, if you interacted with me during that, I probably gave you about 5 minutes of my time and then found myself busy elsewhere. And like I purposely try to keep busy because I don't know what to do, or like I don't know how to talk to these people, and there's so many people and I get overwhelmed. So I would say like what Pari is saying, like everyone is kind of in the same boat. And so even if you're feeling intimidated or just like want to be a fly on the wall, like go dance with your group in the corner. Like that's what we tend to do at shit, or I tend to do at shit. Or, you know, just know that everyone's navigating the situation, and no one I think is really thriving in those spaces quite like genuinely. Like, so that's my 2 cents there.
Really quick, just want to add in, I think that for me personally, I feel like there's a lot of insecurity around like pursuing creative pursuits, right? And like measuring creativity amongst people. So I try really hard. I think that I have a tendency to assume the worst in other people. Like if they do say or do something where I'm like, oh, I think they think they're better than me. Like I can't have this conversation. Like I'm trying really hard to kind of like reframe that and like until they give me like a concrete reason for me to not talk to them, or like, you know what I'm saying? Like try not to assume the worst in the other person, because I feel like that also can get in the way of like some people will just, maybe they're shy too, just because they're like, you know, big ups in the creative world. That doesn't mean that they're like amazing at having coffee chats or like talking at a party. So I think, yeah, for me personally, it's been really important to try to assume the best in other people because we're all just figuring it out. So.
One last thing to add, I'm so sorry. It's like a 16-part answer to this question. I would say that like if you're feeling like apprehensive, like when you're like, once you like reach out to the person, like you're gonna meet up with them, I always try to like do my research and like prepare like questions, like even if they're not like about like that person's work or whatever, just like something that like you can base a conversation on always helps, because like both people in the conversation, both like the person asking questions and the person answering them, are going to feel really awkward if there isn't like some basis to start the conversation on or continue the conversation. So always coming like over prepared to conversations like that has been my go-to.
Awesome. Well, if anyone has any burning questions or even not so burning questions now, I think this is kind of last call for questions. Or if Human Condition wants to say anything. Oh,
Can I say one, I like 5-second answer, but how did you pick Human Condition for the name?
It was like one of the first things we did, funny enough. It just felt right. It doesn't really have an answer. Sorry. The greatest part is that every time we ask someone like what they think it means, we get a different answer. And I think that sums it up pretty nicely.
I have a question for you guys. What do any of you guys have do any of you guys have a definition of the human condition that you would like to share? Anybody? I'm gonna go.
Suffering.
Oh God.
Yes, who said that? Patrick?
Yeah.
Same page,
also,
baby.
also happiness. So, you know, a lot of different sides to it.
I think like a lot of us have been like, I don't know, people I've been talking to, it's like, especially now kind of grappling with this like lack of motivation because we're kind of stuck at home, but like also wanting to get so much gratification from everything that we do, and like kind of juggling that is like always kind of an internal battle that I personally have with myself, which I think is very human. But yeah, suffering.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's
If no one has, oh, sorry, Jacques. I was just gonna say, if no one has any other questions, feel free to DM us or email us or find us individually if DMing the Human Condition page feels daunting. Like, we're always happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Raph. Ree's cat's name is Florence Muse. You'd love to see it. Cool. Well, is there any other parting message you wanna tell the people, Human Condition folks, or A&E, Sabrina, EBRIMA, Carmen? Okay. Well, we'll have. Oh, sorry.
No, I was gonna say, do take them up on that offer to reach out to them, just because they're some of the nicest, like, down to earth people that I know, and all of them have influenced my personal journey so much, as well as just like a lot of people that I know. So definitely do take the opportunity to reach out to them, because I think one thing that I've learned from them, and kind of bouncing off that question, is that you will never really not gain something from just asking someone a question and just being vulnerable. So yeah, definitely take them up on that.
Also, we're so bored. We need help. Please reach out. I need something to do.
Yeah, I think I just want to wrap up and say thank you everyone for coming. I really appreciate y'all taking the time to start your weekend off with us in Human Condition. This is definitely a group that, like I think we mentioned earlier, just continues to inspire us and probably started a lot of like the current A&E team on our creative journeys. So thank you all for spending the time with us as well. Yes, Jacques.
I don't have the raise hand button. We're gonna be doing more office hours like this in the coming weeks and the next like month and a half until the end of the school year. We have like a few different types of stuff planned, but if there's anyone you guys really want to get the chance to talk to or learn from, or a type of like maybe you really want someone from a certain industry, reach out to us personally or on any of our like A&E social medias and let us know, and we'll do our best to try to bring that to you. Because these events are really just about trying to give students the opportunity to like learn from people who have expertise that you don't have yet. Great. Well, thank you all for coming. Enjoy your weekend. It's beautiful in Seattle, at least in U District. Always beautiful in U District, but yeah, it's a given.
Oh, and also I think we're gonna put this on the YouTubes. So if you want to come back to it, maybe you can see all of our faces in these Zoom boxes again. Cool.
Thank you guys
so much, and goodbye, Florence Muse. Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate y'all.
Thanks for coming through.
Bye. Thank you.